Hello and welcome everyone joining us today for this webinar on scaling Agile. And we're going to be talking about real stories about scaling success. And hopefully we'll have a lot of tips and tricks for you guys to take away today as well. And I am joined by an amazing panel of colleagues, but I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to drop in, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll start the webinar. I see people are nicely pouring in. I'll give it just another minute. All right, 16:02. Everybody needs to know that I'm almost German. I'm living in Berlin now, so I'm going to start on 6:02 on the dot. It's one of our best redeeming qualities, to be honest. So let's go. I have with me a couple of colleagues that helped me shape a lot of the narrative behind Prince to Agile as well. I have people coming in from real world experience today talking with us about their stories about scaling. They are in very different industries and also transverse globally. So that's going to be very interesting to see because there is a lot of focus when we're talking about Agile, maybe on Eurocentric or maybe like more American economies, and it's now a global thing. So let's talk about how we are applying this across the universe, I want to say, because it's just that good, right? So let us have a look. I have with me Karin Kresse. You're first on my screen, so I'm going to have you introduce yourself briefly, and then I will just call the other guys, and then we can move on.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. I'm very pleased to be here with you all. My name is Karin. Karin is very German, actually. But yeah, I'm an expert in agility. I've seen a lot of projects going on, what worked well and what didn't work well. So I'm talking a bit of that. And especially, I really love change management because it helps us to become agile, to grow in agile, and to scale agile. And this is what I'll be talking about.
Nice, thank you. Sue, you're next.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sue Hopgood. I have been working in the Agile space since the 90s when we didn't even call it Agile because we didn't even know it was Agile, but we made stuff happen and we were on fire, and bigger, traditional developers were just, couldn't touch us really. And so it's been really interesting over these years to share that experience and also get experience from other people that I've come across. So yeah, I'll take that angle.
Happy to have you here. Imran.
Hi, I'm Imran. I've been doing project and agile related stuff for about 10-ish years, more or less. I am also based in Germany, so quite the German panel today. But I have also worked with a few companies in Denmark and Sweden as well. So I am a consultant, so I get around. I've been to a handful of companies and try to support there, and my approach is very hands-on, so hopefully I can contribute some real experiences from the trenches, so to speak.
Looking forward to it. My name is Ruth, and I have been in classical project management, if you can even call it that anymore, for 15 years. And I've been going on to become an agile coach and psychological consultant for the past almost decade, I think. And I've been having a lot of fun with the way Agile has been changing, because it has been around for quite a while, just like Sue said, right? And we've just been evolving it into different forms. And obviously now, as it's being applied more broadly, we are seeing people trying to struggle to scale it. And that is what we're talking about today. So scaling, we're typically talking about anything that is centered on an Agile framework and it surpasses 2 or 3 teams. Is what we're technically saying. So that will be scaled, right? But now we're talking like big industries. We're talking about big companies. We're talking, I don't know, 20-ish teams. Let's start there. How will Agile work with that? And that is something that we are hearing a lot of chatter about. There was a very popular hashtag going around, Agile is dead. And I would like to show you guys today that Agile is not dead, but just misunderstood. And we need to have a look at what works best and how to apply Agile best. So learn from our mistakes and take our tips and tricks. I am going to jump in right with the first question. So a lot of people are actually talking about leadership not being able to adopt agility very well. And that is like one of the main problems behind Agile not performing well. At least that's what a couple of surveys are saying. Obviously, people surveyed are probably most likely workers in the trenches, so to say. So let's take that with a grain of salt, but that is what a lot of the surveys out there are saying. So why is leadership struggling, and how can we get to align leadership to organizational culture so that we can support agility at scale? Karin, I think that's your ballpark, right?
But I think I heard a lot of questions in one question. So this is really hard to answer right now. But so I'll take the last part. So aligning leadership and organizational culture to support agility at scale. So first of all, to be honest, I think that the word aligning leadership and culture to support agility is, or sounds easier at it as it actually is, because I think that culture isn't something you flip a switch on, because it reflects like deep patterns, habits, unspoken rules, and collective memories of the things that we've always been doing like that. So it's a real complex and often emotional thing, and also it's sometimes invisible until you start changing how people work together. So until we become agile. So culture doesn't change because leadership wants it to change. And there we are at your first part, what you just asked, because we all know that it starts with a leadership that needs to commit to the paradigm change when we become agile, or when we want to scale agile, because this is also a paradigm shift. And that needs to be supported by especially them. And what I also come across when I hear that question is that scaling is not really about rolling out a framework for three teams or 20-ish teams, but it's about surfacing what's really going on and what really are the problems within the organization. So, and you have to be ready to face that, and leadership has to be ready to face that. And that can be really scary, because agility brings transparency, and transparency shows where things do not work out yet. So where silos exist, or where decision-making is stuck anywhere, or where people maybe don't feel safe to speak up. So these are the challenges we face, and leadership has to be ready for that. And so when we talk about aligning these things like culture and leadership, in my opinion, it needs to be, or to speak multiple languages, because some people connect through business cases to scaling agile, like how does it help our business? How does it help our KPIs? And others need to feel and experience what agile really means and what scaling agile really means. So how it enables learning, how it enables trust and faster feedback loops and so on. And at the end, real collaboration. So, and I think that all these things have to take place, and that emotional connection is really key to that. So, and first of all, the leadership has to feel it, and we can do that through simulations, through pilots, maybe to start small. Also within the leadership team, this is what the organization I currently work for did. Like they did a culture or an agile change within the leadership team first as a pilot, and then rolled it out into the organizations, into the small organizations below that. So this was really helpful. And also to to start self-reflecting first within the leadership team, because I think agile leadership is the thing that's, or it is nothing different than what has always been declared as good leadership, like asking questions instead of giving orders, giving employees freedom, autonomy, believing that everyone acts to the best belief and knowledge at all times, and so on, and walking the talk. So if leadership wants the people to scale agile, then they have also to walk the talk while doing it and supporting it. Yeah. So
that's a very powerful thing that you just said there, walking the talk, right? I think that's a sentence that's been going around, I think, almost since forever, since Kanban and Scrum were on the market at least. And I think that's one of the main issues. And so people are asking, how do I get my C-levels to join a Scrum course? And I think, Imran, top-down transformation, that's kind of your thing, right?
Yeah, well, I do like that success story that Karen told with you start with leadership and then you do the transformation and then it trickles down. From what I have seen, it is rarely the case. So more often than not, you start at the bottom, you have like one team that does a few sprints or does a project in Agile. Then you feel like, okay, it worked out well, let's just do it for everyone, right? So that one is a little bit conflicting because the role of leadership changes significantly in Agile. They do have like very different responsibilities than they used to have before. And this is not something that everybody's always aware of. I really like your example. Let's get the C-level into a Scrum course. That's nice, but all the courses and all the contents, or not all of them, but most of them, they focus on the practices, right? Like how do you run a Scrum sprint and how do you run the events and so on and so on. But the philosophy behind it, it's rarely transported, and the change requirements for leadership also. So that's something that we also addressed in Prince to Agile specifically, right? So how does the role of leadership change? For me, that's something that is often swept under the rug. And also a lot of things that we are going to discuss today, or at least in what I have in my head, is when you do these kind of transformations or scaling of agility, you tend to jump into the practices, into the doing agile part of it, right? And the being agile part, the roots basically that you need to have, the base, the foundation that you need to have before you can actually start the practices, they're often neglected. So either they're forgotten or they're supposed to be built along the way, which is very difficult. So yeah, as Karen said, the cultural change needs to come first, but then again, the cultural change is not a checklist that you can tick off boxes on and then be agile. This is something that needs to be addressed with proper change management, I think.
Yeah, that's a nice word, proper change management, right? Sue, I think you have something to say on this as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about training and coaching later. But you know what Karen and Imran was talking about just triggered a few thoughts about when I've had really senior people in the room just coming along for a foundation project management course, and we talk about Agile, and we'll have a 20-minute flip chart moment. And it was a chief admin officer for a big Japanese bank. He went away and thought about it, and he came back in the next day and said, "You've just changed the direction of the next 10 years of my life, just by talking about fixing and flexing and having fixed time and fixed quality, or more or less." So he was of an age where, I mean, I was thinking about agile stuff in the 90s, but that was just me and a few other IT people. But he was thinking something else. And when he was doing his school of management, he was being taught, okay, a bit of Japanese school of management, but you know, the people you know, he's now in a senior position and people talk about agile, but until you've actually had a little bit of coaching and training, it doesn't hit you. It is a moment. I think we've all had that moment where we've gone, okay, yeah, I think I understand now how this is different from the way we do this traditionally. And some of the senior leadership up there have not yet gone through that change. And so I guess that's where Karen and Imran, that's where you spend your days now, isn't it? And Ruth, trying to make that light bulb moment happen. And so once you've done that, once you've got those higher level senior leadership team, once they've had that moment, then you can make some big transformative change.
Yeah, I really like that. And I want to pick up on the idea of the 20-minute flip chart moment, because I think that's really what it's all about, right? It's not really necessarily, as Imran said, them sitting through a foundation on how the doing gets done, because that's not what they should be worried about, right? Leadership asks themselves completely different questions in Agile. And I think that's also one of the common mistakes that, I mean, C-levels or even higher, they have literally no time for anything. And sometimes it's all that it takes is 20 minutes, but we need a different direction for what we teach them, right? And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen being made, like wasting time of decision makers with stuff that they can't really use in their daily on the daily job, and then they don't know what it's really about, and they'll like, yeah, okay, so here's the money, do Scrum courses if that's what it takes, right? And then it doesn't work. So I know that everybody in the audience is probably wondering about this as well, because that's the juicy content, right? That's what we learn about your biggest mistakes. So, what were the biggest mistakes or missteps, if you want to say it that way, during your scaling journey, and how did you recover from them? Imran, I think that's for you.
Yeah, I think I already mentioned the biggest misstep is scaling too quickly and too early and without a proper plan. I think that's something that happened a lot, especially. So just imagine this scenario. You've done like an agile pilot project kind of thing, right? One team has delivered the project with Scrum or with any other agile framework. And now you want to scale it. You don't have any expertise on Agile in your company because you've not practiced it before, right? So you get in some Agile consultants and they give you a few trainings, and maybe they prepare a brief or something, and then you're just supposed to transform. And what I've seen is it usually hits the people in the teams quite suddenly, right? You have to change your ways of working. But usually, I think they are able to adapt quite quickly with the help of a good agile coach. So they can recover quite quickly. But the ones that are usually hurt the hardest, in my opinion, is middle management. Because first of all, their roles change a lot. So I've had a lot of like department leads that were suddenly product owners, and those are two very, very different profiles. And they're basically left to be alone. Also, there might be a thing of pride or showing face or some other cultural things where they don't ask for help. And where would they even get it? So now you have agile consultants that are usually external people like you and me. We don't have that basis of trust yet because we've just joined in to help that transformation, but we haven't really built that trust yet. So there is no really opportunity to help in a way that would be needed. And I've done one transformation where we hit like a really big wall with this approach. So we noticed that across the board, there were hidden conflicts, especially among those groups of people that used to have the teams or departments that used to be actually leading a department and now supposed to lead on a product or lead on a project, which is quite different than leading a department. We had to halt the whole change project. That was quite a big one, and set up a new one. So we actually, we talked about this, set up a proper change management, right? So we had to stop and then reevaluate and set it up from the ground up. And that was quite difficult because obviously when you run these terms and these methods and so on, people tend to burn out a little bit. So it doesn't have the same effect anymore, or there's another change, or it's going to be the same thing, but just with called different names. So you need to be very careful when recovering from this. So what I do like is involving, or what we also did in that project is involving leadership way earlier, like Karen mentioned before. Start with them. Start with their roles, start how they can be evangelists for agility as well in the organization, and go more iterative approach, right? Start with not, because what we did is we had one team, I think two, they delivered something in Agile, let's do it for everybody. And that was way too fast. So start doing it iteratively, start doing maybe one branch of the company or something like this, and then start rolling it out, because you get more people that can share their own comprehensible success stories, right? If your peers are telling you that agility is good, then you are way more eager to accept it than if some external person or market data shows you that agility is good.
Yeah. So actually, a question fitting this perfectly came in Q&A the Q&A question box just now, and I want to ask Sue if she's comfortable talking about this. I know that there are a couple of things you can't say, right? Because a lot of the stuff that you do is quite classified. But talking about mistakes and having C-levels or leadership being evangelists, or what we actually want to say, because that's a bit like religious coded, right? What we want to say is like they will multiply and they will be the example, so to say, for how to live the being of Agile. So how do we do that in industries like government or defense? Because we are dealing with a very hierarchical sector there, where senior grades are very used to directive leadership styles. And that's kind of the opposite of Agile, right?
Yeah, I'm teaching and consulting most of the time with publicly funded organizations. So the army, I spend a lot of time with the army. Yeah, you've got some seriously hierarchical structures. And we've had over the years many discussions with a range of seniorities in the room. You've got the people doing it, you've got the people leading it, and that whole cultural shift. And Imran was sort of you kind of, and Karen a bit earlier as well, but talking about if you do this too quickly, then it doesn't work. And then you've got a recovery phase, and the recovery phase is but it's a sensitive phase, and you've got to plan it carefully because people have had their fingers burned. And changing culture takes time. And in my experience, the larger the organization, and particularly if you are publicly funded and highly scrutinized, and you've been going for maybe hundreds of years, the more difficult it is to, or the longer it takes to change culture, and it is challenging. So we come right back to some of our earlier question, answer to the earlier question, which is it comes down to leadership. And so what I often see is we've got leaders really high who are really up for this, let's do this. And then we've got people who see it and how it can work on a day-to-day team level. And then the layers in between going, hang on, I'm part of a big hierarchy. And I think Imran might have said this, the role is changing. And I mean, some of these historical structures that they're working in, they do not change overnight. They cannot change overnight because they've got remuneration and promotion trails all hardwired in. So then we come back into the whole idea of, well, we might not be able to go fully 100% what people would say is completely agile. But Prince 2 Agile is more about saying it's not a question of are you or are you not. It's how much can you use, how agile can you be? So then trying to understand the constraints that you're working within, which if you are publicly funded, highly scrutinized, big organizations, that needs more discussion than in other areas. And to answer the question, yeah, it's not easy and it takes time. I think that's the short answer.
And rightly so, right? Because if we're talking government funding, or people want to know where their money went, so it's very logical that we do not want to jump the hype train and just start doing something and pour millions into it, right?
But I'm seeing that recognition at the senior level. This is going to take time, and we're not talking about a year or so. We might be talking 10 years.
But that is always the case when we're talking governance, right? In that area, we're talking more like strategy. So Imran, you have something on this, I think.
Yeah, because another pitfall that I see is, especially when you come from an environment where you're used to having processes for a lot of things and streamline things and basically rules, if you want to call it that, is that you opt to do a very complex, heavyweight, agile approach. So you jump straight into something like SAFe or something like this, that is very big, very complex, because it feels familiar, right? It has a lot of rules. There's a lot of governance involved in it as well. And then you feel like, okay, this is the closest to agile that I'm allowing myself to go to, which might be the wrong approach. So I would always opt for try something maybe in a closed environment, but let it rise organically, right? Start with the smallest, slimmest, leanest agile approach you can think of, and then let it grow. And obviously, we all know this, there is not one agile framework that suits every organization. Everybody's looking for it, but it doesn't exist. So let your own agile framework grow by itself.
Yeah. I really love this idea because the idea of the one holy grail that will fix everything that's wrong in your organization. Hey, now it's agile. It's kind of doing agile because of the wrong motives. And I think Karen has some experience with that as well.
Yeah, because I experienced many organizations starting to doing agile, and this is also like the wrong thing, right? Because it excludes the mindset. But because the market does and the industry does, and everyone becomes agile and everyone becomes faster, because there are some books around that could be misunderstood, where it's claimed that agile makes you a lot of faster and so on. But we all know that when we have the learning curve, the productivity goes down first before it gets higher again. So this is what I refer to as doing agile or becoming agile based on the wrong motives, so to say. So this is also pretty tricky. So if you want to scale agile, then ask yourself first, why do we want that, and what is really the benefit or the outcome at the end that we hope to achieve.
I see a question that came as a follow-up on this in the Q&A, and I think, Karen, you could have an answer on that. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is that also kind of where the transformation plan fits?
Yes.
What is that anyway?
I want you to ask that question now.
Please do. Yeah, what is the transformation plan and where does it fit? Is this where it fits?
The transformation plan fits especially for that, because the transformation is something that is like long term. So it's like an organizational thing that so the transformation plan is what helps you going through a project, and maybe also if you want to do a pilot project with a small thing where you want to apply agile things and learn about agile and get into the agile mindset as well. So this is something what really helps you and what really points out why this is needed and what we can learn from that and what we will do after that project and what we can do in the organization to really become agile step by step.
Yeah. Step by step is a very nice thing there, because I have often come across resistance from teams and individuals while you're trying to like put in something new. It doesn't really matter what you're putting in, right? New ideas, they're scary at first. I might not be on top of that, so maybe I don't need it, or maybe I get replaced or whatever. There's a lot of like anxiety happening, and as soon as you put something new in, or the kind of resistance that's like, yeah, this is the new thing that they're pushing. It's just for management. Nothing's going to change on the ground level anyway. And I know that you have some let's say experience managing this sort of resistance, Karen. What would you say actually really helps, like real life talk?
Mm-hmm. I think that first of all, people are often misunderstood because there are dynamics between leadership and employees, as an example, that are based on false assumptions often. So, and one sort of bias we can see or we can observe is that when there's a change going on, we often face the so-called fundamental attribution error. So this is a cognitive bias where people overemphasize other people's character traits and underemphasize external factors that maybe led to that behavior. So if we have an example, let's say we just implemented a new software in our firm, and the employees, we can observe that the employees are not working with that software. So this is what we can observe. And now there's a fault in interpreting this behavior. So people often then say, yeah, the people are lazy, they are resistant, they do not want to learn how to use it. And what really might be the reason why nobody's using our software is, and what is often overlooked, are the external factors like anxiousness or failure, when we have like not a good failure culture, as an example, missing knowledge, or missing information because maybe the people don't know that this software exists. So I set up a huge curve in my explanation right now. But what I find very important is to see and to acknowledge that we work with people, and when we work with people, it's really complex. So that there are many biases when we go through a change, because we mainly work with people, right? So first of all, to understand that we're human and that we all have human needs. Like resistance is neither good nor bad because it's pretty neutral. It just tells us that there's information that someone needs. Like, hey, I would really like to know how this is working or how I can benefit from using the new software or else. And behind everything, what we need as an information is mainly like a human need, which is either status, certainty, autonomy, reliability, or fairness. And this is all like very human. And when we speak to the people open-minded, have these human needs in mind, then we can really good manage resistance.
Yeah. So I know that all of you, or at least most of you, I'm not sure about Imran, but I'm pretty sure you have been doing this as well, like training and coaching. How important is it? Because it costs money, right? So what role did training and coaching play in these agile transformations? And would you recommend it now? What would you recommend? I think Sue, that's for you.
Yeah, but I'm happy for everyone to chip in on this. I mean, I'm just completely biased because I've spent the last 10 years doing this pretty much, and it is so important. Just to we talked about resistance just earlier, and that whole idea of allowing people to vent. So a training session gives people the ability to vent, and certainly as a facilitator, Karen, you talked about how people are misunderstood their actions. We've got our own biases, but giving them a safe place where they can say, right, I am not happy with what's going on here. I don't think this works. So a training and or coaching environment can help get that out of the way. We can and dealt with, and people sort of moving a bit further along the change curve to a point where they get acceptance of the change that's coming and really buy into it, or maybe even contribute in a more positive way towards the outcome. Yeah, there's a lot in that, and I think the higher up the ladder we can get people trained, going back to our earlier question, we start shifting the culture, the more likely it is that lower level change activities are going to succeed. I mean, I could talk forever about this, so
I know,
you just have to shut me up.
I could listen to you talk about it forever as well, because you have like so much.
I could literally talk for 4 days, Ruth, if you want.
Yeah,
But,
let's set up a couple of more webinars. I want to hear you on this. But I will have to digress for a second, because I think what you said really struck a nerve with me. Because I think a lot of times when we go into organizational change management, which is when we tell a business basically, okay, we're going in a different direction strategically, and very often implementing the agile mindset at least, or like more new techniques already, is change management in that level. People are going to be sitting in these trainings, and they're not there to learn, they're there to vent. And I know that Imran has experience on this, so what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I really liked how Sue described the situation, because in my experience, also the trainings that obviously I don't have as much experience with it as you do, but from the ones that I felt like were more successful than the others were the ones that were basically very interactive, and where the people did what you just described, right? That they contributed, they shaped the agility in their own organization as well. So I feel like it is very important that the training is not something that you offer as a webinar or as a course or as an external training where people go, but have someone come in to your organization, tailor the training to your organization, your culture, your everything, and let people experience it very hands-on. So maybe you even do kind of cases that are very relatable for the people because it is from the industry, maybe even from the company itself, from the organization itself, and let them experience it by doing it, by actually doing it, like executing it. Because whenever I do these kind of trainings in the beginning, when I do the theory chunk, everyone's like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it, but what's the point? And then at the end, then I usually do like a practical, a hands-on thing. And then at the very end, when we collect feedback, mostly it's the same that says, okay, I didn't understand it in the beginning, but then I tried it out and now I kind of see the benefits. So I feel like tailoring the training to the organization is crucial, or not crucial, but it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just add there that seeing people go through, I probably do something similar to Imran, and in giving people practical experience of a few Scrum sessions. And fortunately, no one's walked out of any of mine, but I have colleagues in that space who've had to leave um, when they've been involved in Scrum sessions for the first time because it was just too much for them. And then you have great retrospectives. You talk about why they felt uncomfortable and they get better over time. And so having that safe place to experiment and try it out and see how people feel, yeah, it's part of, it makes the journey when you get into the real world much smoother, I think.
Yeah. I think part of what makes people resentful in coming into event as well as if we have a mismatch, right? If we're scaling, a lot of the stuff we're scaling, it has to work differently on different levels in the organization, right? And one of the things that works very differently is processes. And I saw a question in the Q&A that could really do with a question on how to avoid the pitfall of scaling agile processes without having scaled the agile mindset first. Because very often we go into transformation and then we find out, oh, it would have been good if we had the mindset, but now we're kind of stuck with already like defined processes. And I know that Karen wants to talk about this. You're itching, I see it.
The question is, we all love to do or to think a bit linear, like mindset first, and then we do the processes stuff and so on. But actually, I think that these things can go well hand in hand because when we experience working in these scaled processes, as an example, then we can also evolve our mindset. So this is I think goes hand in hand. So how can we avoid that? Again, I would recommend to follow grassroots initiatives, and also so when there are teams that say, okay, we want to work scaled, so how can we do that? Then work with, because it's more likely to be successful at the end. And also do a pilot, not make a big bang. So we want to scale, and we want to scale fast. I know, because economy or the market wants us to do that, but working with starting with the pilots is always better than doing like the big bang at the end. And also identify promoters, like who wants to really support this thing and this project or even program maybe. So build up a network around scaling agile, build up a change agent network. We're again at change management, right? But I think these things go along hand in hand, and scale what works. So maybe, so if you're already agile, you have found out, so this works for us as an organization and this doesn't work. So scale what works. And if it's the retrospective that you want to do with 200 people or more, then just try that out. So you can collect many beautiful experiences while just trying things out that work for you right now, and then scale it step by step, a bit bigger then.
I love the idea of like coming in with a pilot and then trying a couple of things out and then scaling it. But I want to ask Sue on that, because we know that you have this experience, right, in quite like a lot more rigid environments than maybe Agile is used to or being used to being applied to. And I think it is very important to foster the Agile mindset within a large organization before starting project transformation. But we all know that's not how life works sometimes, right? So how difficult can it be to start a project using agile methodologies when you don't have the culture yet?
Well, it can be really difficult, but people have told me about things that have gone really, really right about that. You do have to have leadership buy-in for this to work. So you've got somebody up high who really wants to promote Agile. The rest of the organization is potentially very traditional. You pick a team that's up for it, and that's an art in itself. Train them up. But I'm thinking specifically about a team of evangelists they were for Scrum, but they worked in a very traditional industry. In fact, I think they were for a water company, if I remember it rightly, and they were getting rid of leaks and fatbergs. I mean, that is as far away from the IT origins of Agile that you can possibly get. And the rest of the project teams were very traditional. They were adamant that they were 3 times more productive than the traditional project teams, and working using Scrum to get through their backlog. And that was so empowering. And the chief exec, she had an office. They took over a boardroom. The chief exec would put her head around the door, look at the big visible charts on the wall. They were very, paper-based. And that was really invigorating. So that, and the other teams were looking. The other teams were looking, going, hang on a minute, they're 3 times more productive than we are. How is that? So it can work that way round. However, I think if you can get the agile mindset in at the top and have it filter down over time, that has got to be better because because we've already talked about this. I think Karen really nailed that. The doing agile because everyone says we should, rather than really being agile. And in that organization, everybody started to see that this is the way to go, and that so they were change champions. Love a change champion.
What they're really good for is like showing us the behaviors, right? The wanted behaviors and how they are applied, because it's very nice that a book says do this and do that, right? But how do I apply that on the job? That looks very differently. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about there are actually more like the scaling of practices. And I know Imran has some experience with that.
Yeah, so it also kind of ties into how do you start doing agile things without being agile already. For what I can see, what has helped a lot is trying to get that openness from the people involved. And you can get it by framing things as an experiment. And this can be used both on the team level. For example, let's try doing retrospectives every 2 weeks for, I don't know, like a quarter or a month or something, whatever you can get. And then see how it feels and define a hypothesis if you can, and parameters and maybe even metrics that would help you evaluate that if that experiment was successful. And usually they are, not always, but things that are very common in a lot of agile frameworks like retrospectives and planning and all these kind of things, they are usually successful. And things that are more controversial, let's say estimation is something that is usually very, very controversial because teams often feel like, oh, now I'm being controlled. Now I have to kind of be, I'm going to be accountable if I need 1 hour more than I estimated. So those things, for example, can also be framed as an experiment. And if they work, they work. And if they don't, they don't. And it's a very easy thing to define the hypothesis, let everybody know, be transparent about it, and then decide together. And this can also be applied on a level where you want to scale agility itself. So you can also say, let's frame this as an experiment to have, I don't know, 2 teams, 4 teams, or this unit as a whole. Let it run as an agile pilot, or bigger than a pilot maybe, for a quarter, and then let's see what happens, and frame the success criteria, because that gets you the buy-in very, very more easy than if you say, okay, the change is coming now, you cannot stop it, right? The result is usually the same. The change, if it's good, then it will come, right? But you give people the option to contribute, to control, and not to feel the anxiety that you mentioned before.
Yeah, fully agree. So we have been talking about a couple of things, and I want to slowly transition us into Q&A. I know I have been picking up a couple of Q&A questions along the way already when they were fitting nicely into the conversation. But what advice would you give to organizations just beginning to scale agile practices? And we'll go Karen, Sue, Imran.
Because I do not like scaling agile practices for the sake of scaling agile practices. I would recommend to ask yourself why you want to scale agile and really feel behind it, and set up a big picture, like a vision where you want to go, point out the outcomes, what you want to achieve with your organization, and understand also the benefits behind it. And also, we talked much about leadership buy-in and sponsorship buy-in. This is very, very crucial for the beginning of it. And we also talked about having a transformation plan. So this is also a nice artifact what you can do, and which really helps you going through this change, and helps you even after this change. So what stays mainly and what you can adapt if you learn something throughout scaling Agile.
Yeah, and I really liked, Karen, what you said earlier, scale what works. And that's, in fact, that's my takeaway. I wrote that down. It's just, I mean, because that's what it's all about. My phrase is test and measure. So we'll try stuff out and really look and talk honestly at the retrospective, you know, going into it, obviously trying to examine why you want the change and what you're aiming for, having that overall vision. Yeah, great. I mean, that's absolutely, isn't it, Karen? That's where we start. But then if it doesn't work, being emotionally attached to these things doesn't help. So actually saying, okay, well, we tried that, that doesn't work. So scale what works, test and measure, have, encourage that environment where people, it really is a safe to fail environment. People say, oh, it's safe to fail around here, and then something doesn't work, and you find out actually, no, it wasn't really a safe to fail environment, was it? And that needs to be knocked on the head. We need teams that feel psychologically safe and actually encouraged to make mistakes and learn. And so if you're trying this out and things aren't working, making sure you protect the team and not penalizing them is a big part of the process. And it's not every organization has a culture where they're ready for this. So yeah, maybe I'll just stop there. Yeah, we have to maybe pause. I think, Imran, you had that in one of your situations, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can basically agree with you. So start small, scale what works. Measuring is also one thing that I find very important, and I want to emphasize. I guess that's how all of us mean it, but also for people watching. Measuring is not solely confined to performance metrics. You should have something like a health survey or something within the whole organizational unit, at least, that is impacted by the change. Because I think we have a very nice picture in Prince to Agile as well, where the people are at the center of things, right? And that's how it is in real life. If Agile transformations usually don't succeed or fail because something was done in the wrong way. It is usually because something has happened with people. So focus on the people, measure if everybody is taking along on the journey that you are taking. And empower the people. So the things that we talked about earlier, leadership's role also needs to change. Empower the people to take their own decisions, set up a culture where you can fail, as Sue already said, and celebrate if things work. I think that's something that's also very important. Use the ceremonies within the frameworks and also every other tool that you have deployed in your organization to celebrate when things are successful. Because if you see success, then you are more likely to embrace it. The change that led to their success.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So I want to move over to a couple of questions from Q&A, and I know that we already started to answer one of these. It says, do you think it is important to foster first an agile mindset within a large organization before starting any project or transformation using agile project management methodologies? So whatever we're doing, do we need the agile mindset first in a large organization? Do we really need it first? Like, can we do a different approach? Who wants to grab that one?
I think I answered that, but happy for other people to chip in with other thoughts. I think mindset first would be my vote. Karen?
Mindset first, yes, but it's like overlapping, I think. So we can start with coaching, training, enablement of the people, like also explaining what we want to achieve with that. So the why is always important when we work with people. So why do we want that, and so on. So this is for me like also mindset work and enabling that we're open to Agile, but also it overlaps with the processes. So we can start with our first Agile project, not having the real Agile mindset, because I think this is also a scale, right? This is from 1 not Agile to 10, maybe, which is really Agile and where we have a growth mindset and so on. But if there's anything in between, and maybe we're anywhere on the spectrum, so we can start nevertheless, although not everyone has like the real Agile mindset, so to say, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's also this is not a typical end start relationship between those two, right? So you're not going to start doing agile things when you're done, but I agree you start with the basics, with the foundation, and once you've kind of built that a little bit, you start doing the practices, and then you will get there eventually. And also, yeah, what I wanted to say is the goal is define the goal, right? Because the goal should not be to be agile for being agile's sake, right? You have a goal that you
Yes.
want to achieve with your transformation, define that parameter, and then track progress, as Karen said, towards like how close are we to it, 1 to 10, because the goal is never to just be agile for being agile's sake, or shouldn't be at least.
Yeah. All right, so I think we discussed that one sufficiently, at least how far we can take it within a small webinar like this. You're just giving us food for thought, guys, for new webinars, so keep them coming. We love all of your questions, really. And I really did expect this question to come in sooner, but it did come. So AI, we're all talking about it, right? So as we are moving into this like new global revolution, technical revolution of AI, how can we apply AI into scaling Agile? Who wants this one?
I really want to hear if people are using AI tools. I mean, it seems to be that there's lots out there, and I would love to know what people are actually finding useful. So I'm not sure that I've got a huge amount in terms of like practical recommendations right now, but things like transcripting conversations, we could speeding up coding if you're in IT, that that's going to help, isn't it? So we just incorporate the tools that are useful into our agile mindset.
I think it can also help with doing agile things that you've never done before and just get some guidance without already consulting the external agile coach if you have one, or even if you don't have one, which is even worse, right? So you might spark things with AI like you do in other things as well. You can, for example, ask it for good team health check metrics, like what are things that are usually measured. Because usually when you scale agility, or if you transform into an agile workplace, you've never done this before, right? You don't have any experience with it, or rarely just a little bit of experience with it. So AI, I think in general, is a good tool to do sparring, to get inspiration. Of course, also later in the funnel to automate things, like you can automate the metric tracking and so on with it as well. There are a lot of, I could talk for hours about like each individual practice that AI can support you with. But if I'm looking at it at a higher level, it's good for sparring, it's good for automating certain processes within the agile transformation. And if anyone wants to talk in more detail, I'm always open to it. Hit me up on LinkedIn.
That's a very nice and shameless plug. I love it. Hit everybody here up on LinkedIn, please, people. These are real experts. So get them while you can. They're online right now, probably shortly after as well. So I see a lot of people in chat actually responding, which is really cool to get this conversation going. And I see that a couple of people are saying they've used to create scripts for testing. And I also see a lot of like questions about tooling. And I think what you said is also my experience. We are seeing a lot of chatter about AI, but the real usage of AI is not really happening unless it's like in a big corp like Meta or whatever, right? Those that are actually actively producing the AIs are the ones that are actually starting to use them for a lot of stuff because they trust it, they built it. And that is the problem with a lot of organizations right now. They don't trust AI yet because they don't know what happens. Hardly anybody is really skilled to use it. And they don't know yet how it conflicts with data, privacy breach, stuff like that. So people are like, they want to use it, but they are scared to burn their fingers on it. And I think that is a very good answer to, could it help? Probably yes, but it's not being used that much as you think right now. People are just talking a lot about it. But stuff that I have seen, at least in project management, because I see another question came in: as organizations adopt AI tools, how do you see AI contributing to the success of agile transformation, especially when we're talking scaling mindset? The interesting thing is that mindset is the human part, right? Everything else, updating a Scrum board, the AI could do that. The AI could track it. The AI could keep you updated, send out reports and stuff. And that is what it really helps you guys with. At least that's what's happening in the trenches right now of those organizations that are using it. Let's say it this way, because there are not a lot out there. You might be surprised, but mostly people are using it more like an administrative assistant. I would say it's typing up reports. It's doing scripts, like Sue said. It's helping people develop first drafts of plans or whatever. I've seen a couple of people doing their risk management matrices with it. So it's like very basic stuff that you might give to your assistant. That's what AI is doing right now to actually help you free up the space so you can work on mindset. So that is what it should be doing in my experience, because people learn from people, right? And you can be the best AI user of all time, but if you're not being agile, how do you want other people to believe that it could work, right? They need to see it being implemented on the job. So I think that is what we're talking, that AI should be using the technical stuff. I'm not going to endorse tools though, you guys. There are a couple of really, really good things out there. And if I would endorse anything, there is a website that is called There's an AI for That. Use it, browse it. Talk to your leadership though, if you're allowed to use it at work, right? Because that's a lot of classified information might go into that. We don't want that. So I would really love to close the AI chapter. We have a very beautiful big chapter on how to use AI in Agile project management in the book, Prince to Agile. So look forward to that. And I would want to move on to, I think, 2 more questions. We had one about the change network, and that really resonated with me. So I want to pull that up quickly. Where is it? How can you successfully run a change network that really makes a difference? And I think Karen has something to say on this.
Yes, because I love that question. That really makes a difference means that someone has observed that this doesn't make a difference. So where's the topic? So I love that question, because I think running a change agent network is not the crucial part, but setting a change agent network is the main part. So first of all, I would always recommend to write really a change agent role. So who is your change agent? What is the purpose of that role? What are the accountabilities? What is this one allowed to do, and what is this one not allowed to do? And then to identify the change agents, because there are some people like early promoters for agility that say, hey, I would really love to learn about that. So this could be a change agent, and you can then also compare with the role and see who can fit in this role. And this is, I think, the most important part while setting this up, and also to make time for these people, because this is a role that needs time, because they have to talk with other people, they have to be enabled anyhow. So please make time for this role, and speak with the people leads as well when you're not the people lead of the one you want to be a change agent. So this is how we set up a good change agent network, because then you have people that are really committed to it. Then we enable them, and then letting them do their work and setting up regular meetings. So this is what I would do, actually.
So we've heard a thing that you can do. Imran, I know you know a couple of things that don't work.
Yeah, I had to be that guy to tell you all this failures, but failures are good because you learn from them, right? That's the agile way. So I've done one particular transformation where it didn't work, and I've learned a lot of things of why it didn't work. I hope my client did as well. So what happened was we wanted to change something, and we assigned a role of change champion or something like this to a bunch of people throughout the organization. And that's basically it. And they were supposed to live the change, bring the change, be the change, but they did not have enough training and knowledge about the topic that they wanted to change into. They did not have the actual powers to do things, right? So because middle management was still putting their finger on things and not going along with a lot of things. And also there was no culture of addressing this. So this was a hidden conflict for quite a while until we discovered what was happening. So my takeaway from this is get people in who actually want to be change agents, give them the power and responsibility, be clear about what they can and can't do, use a delegation matrix or whatever, and then support them. No, don't just leave them alone. It's not solely their responsibility to carry your change. Change is something that affects the whole organization, so everybody has to carry it. Of course, there will people be helming it in and leading, but everybody needs to participate.
Yeah. I really want to close this one off because we have one more minute to go. I see a lot of stuff coming in, so people are using AI for different things, but most of it is what we have been talking about as well. There are a couple of questions we won't get, so I'm sorry for that, guys. Look out for our other webinars, but I want to end this with a very beautiful thing that I've seen in the chat being mentioned, and that's the law of diffusion of innovation. And it says, could we think of agile transformation in a similar way? And how do you help the organization cross the chasm from early agile adopters to agile culture at scale? And I think that is what you will see is what Prince to Agile is doing, and what we have poured all of our hearts and souls into, that it works for organizations, and that's exactly it. We want to diffuse the agility slowly into the organization, because slow change is just the best, right? People can cope, people can get along with it, they can vent, but they can still be a part of it. So thank you guys so much for talking with me about Agile at Scale, real stories of success. I know we could talk for hours, and we shouldn't, because I'm already getting the keep it short. So thank you guys very much for being here with us. Look forward to Prince to Agile coming out. I hope you'll bombard us with questions, hit us up on LinkedIn and find us. And we will be happy to answer your questions as well. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Imran. Thank you, support team.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ruth.
Ruth.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.